Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is Sarus Farivar, senior writer at Forbes. Sarus, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Sarus, you wrote a piece about Flock Safety, a company that touts they, quote, eliminate crime in your community. You found that although Flock lauded crime decrease in a small California city after their AI cameras were installed, crime actually ticked up. So to get started, can you tell us what Flock Safety is and what exactly they offer as a security business?
Sure. So Flock Safety is an Atlanta-based startup. They're worth approximately $4 billion. They're venture-backed by numerous well-known venture capital companies, including Andreessen Horowitz. And Flock Safety has really made a name for itself in recent years nationwide. Probably people watching this who live in the United States, I would not be surprised if your town, your city, uses Flock camera and employs their services. Basically, they sell a type of license plate reader camera that is solar powered. It's like a little black camera that is mounted right next to a solar panel. And typically these are mounted on roadways and highways. And what they're designed to do is they're designed to capture passing cars at high speed and look at their plates, but also look at the type of car, the color of car. Does it have a roof rack? Does it have a bumper sticker? Does it have a bike rack? Things like that. And with this information, police can then use it to go after cars that they're looking for whatever reason, stolen cars, wanted cars, things like that.
I do now want to talk about a specific city, and that is San Marino, California. How did Flock get that deal to install AI cameras in that municipality?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So Flock markets to a lot of cities across America, including many smaller and mid-sized cities. So yeah, San Marino, California is a very small, very wealthy town in Los Angeles County. It's right next to the city of Pasadena in Los Angeles County in Southern California. San Marino doesn't really have a lot of violent crime. Violent crime is basically unheard of in this town. And the crime that they do have is typically nonviolent property crime. So this is their primary concern: is people, breaking into people's homes, stealing stuff from cars, things like that. So what happened was Flock markets to San Marino as they do to many other towns. They meet, police representatives at police conferences, things like that. And eventually, just a few years ago, San Marino police chief goes before the city council and says, hey, we used to have license plate readers, a similar type of camera from a different company. These ones we think are better and cheaper, and we think that they will help drive down crime in our community. And the city council approves, and that's great. And they use them for a couple of years. But lo and behold, our journalism shows that this past year, 2023, what are called Part 1 crimes. These are the most serious types of crimes in any community. So that includes things like burglary, robbery, murder, rape, other awful crimes. The total number of Part 1 crimes in San Marino, as you say, ticked up very slightly between 2023 and the year before the cameras were installed. So that, to me, calls into question their efficacy in terms of driving crimes down.
So can you talk about those numbers for us a little bit? What specifically did the data show when it comes to crime in San Marino? Because you're saying it ticked up, it didn't get reduced.
One of the things that Flock likes to do is they will sell these cameras to a particular town or city, and they will say, look, based on the experience of a city like San Marino, based on the experience of a city like Dayton, Ohio, or others, they will say, look, crime went down in this particular place during this particular time. And a lot of times they, depending on your view of the company, they will either, unintentionally or maybe intentionally sort of conflate or confuse or, distort or exaggerate some of those figures. So in many of their marketing materials, you'll see Flock claiming to other prospective clients, hey, Flock, crime went down in San Marino by 70%, which is like a really huge number. Like if anything reduced crime anywhere by 70%, that would be pretty amazing. What they really mean is that during a very specific window of time, residential burglaries went down by 70% during a very particular window of time of a few months compared to that period previously. However, when you dig into the data that San Marino police makes public already, you find that then right after that period, there was a spike in residential burglaries. So That is not to say that these cameras don't do anything. I just think that, and this is sort of the point that we try to make, is that Flock has been, in our view, exaggerating a fair bit with the efficacy of the technology.
The number 70% when it talks to a decrease in crime is obviously staggering. That sounds like good news for any community. Obviously, from what you're describing, what you're reporting, it sounds like that marketing is misleading. You spoke to San Marino's police chief. What did he have to say about this?
Yeah, the police chief of San Marino is a guy named John Incontro. He's a veteran of law enforcement in Southern California. He said that he couldn't explain why the residential burglaries went down, other than during that period they were using the Flock cameras. However, he did agree that to claim that crime in San Marino had gone down by 70% was not totally accurate. But nevertheless, he, as many other people in law enforcement that we talked to, really praised the technology, and they found it to be effective. And it's easy to understand why. If you're a community that has not had license plate readers before, and somebody's home gets burglarized, or somebody's store gets robbed, or some other crime happens, and you're looking for a very particular car in a very particular time and place, this technology enables you to try to find those people. However, the reality is that license plate reader technology made by some of Flock's rivals has existed now in America for over a decade. And I don't think that there's a ton of evidence that in places around the country where that has existed, including the city where I live, Oakland, California, where again we've had license plate readers for more than a decade now, that those have had a substantive decrease effect on crime.
At the beginning of our conversation, you noted that many of our viewers could live in a community where there are Flock cameras. So how many other towns or cities is Flock operating in right now? And is this company expanding nationwide?
Yes. According to Flock, they operate in approximately 4,000 cities and towns across America. They claim to cover 70% of the American population. Honestly, Flock is expanding as quickly as they can all over the country. If people literally just search in Google News for Flock safety, you'll see news stories around the country almost every day of cities signing deals with Flock, of cities expanding deals with Flock, of Flock representatives showing up at city council meetings, showing up at county meetings, showing up at HOA meetings, things like that. They are really expanding very rapidly. And like I said, compared to some of their rivals, a company called Vigilant, and others, they have really taken over the market for license plate readers selling to law enforcement across the country.
So Flock is really surging, but what has been the response from those markets?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think based on the response from the markets, response from public officials has largely been one of support. By and large, in our research, we found that when Flock presents to a city, when they show up to these city council meetings and they talk about how great their product is, and especially when they talk about how much less expensive, it's approximately half the cost compared to some of their rivals. Law enforcement really encourage their city leaders to go for it. There hasn't been, in our understanding, a ton of pushback. There have been a few communities that have declined to sign with Flock, but here in California, for example, there was a state grant that just went out late last year where tens of millions of dollars of state grant money are being given to different police departments up and down the state, ranging from Oakland to Beverly Hills to Salinas to Los Angeles to many other communities. And a lot of that money, not all of it, but a lot of that money is going towards Flock cameras in the name of public safety.
You also spoke with some criminal justice academics for this story. So what did they make of Flock's AI camera technology paired with those numbers in the marketing materials?
Yeah, so one of the things that Flock did very recently is they put out an academic research report that was authored by its own staff and was done in consultation with some academics in Texas. When we presented that paper to a number of criminology experts and other crime stats experts, half a dozen in fact, many the experts that we spoke to did not find Flock's own research convincing, where they said that they found that for every camera that was added to a city's setup, that they could expect a particular decrease in crime. One of the researchers that we spoke to said, this paper would not pass peer review, right? So social science, as I'm sure people know, typically, when a finding like that is made, it's submitted to academic journals, and there's a very well-known and well-understood and rigorous process whereby academic research can be scrutinized by other people who have an expertise in that field. This paper was not that. This paper was just, a company's own research sort of done in that style. So the people that we spoke to found that, they did not think that this research was convincing, and they had a lot of problems with the methodology of the study.
And so essentially what you're saying is Flock is using what has been described as this unconvincing research to then sell their product nationwide.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in broad strokes, our story shows that Flock has been exaggerating through its marketing materials and, maybe telling an incomplete story through its, purportedly academic research about the efficacy of its product. Again, we're not saying that Flock has zero benefit. We're just saying that the benefit that they claim is nowhere near, in reality, what they claim that it actually is.
I do want to pivot now. Let's talk some money. Flock is booming, expanding nationwide. Who's backed Flock for fundraising?
Yeah, so we mentioned that Flock has received some venture capital. On paper, it's worth $4 billion right now. It's received hundreds of millions, I believe, in venture capital from the likes of Andreessen Horowitz, Founders Fund, and others. It's a company that is growing very, very rapidly, and had a big presence. There's an annual police conference that happens at the end of every year called IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, which I attended in San Diego late last year. Flock had a huge presence at that conference, and was doing demos and trying to garner new contracts by presenting directly to law enforcement.
Can you talk now a little bit about the positives? What are some more glowing remarks maybe that people you've talked to have had to say about Flock's AI cameras?
Yeah, so I think, it's important to remember what Flock's entire premise is, right? They say, you mentioned how their tagline, and it's right on their website, that they promise to eliminate, or they hope to eliminate crime in a community. So the way that they do that, their entire premise is that, the reason why police don't solve crime, and by crime they typically mean property crime, usually, property and violent crime, serious crime. The reason why crimes generally are not solved in America, they say, is because of a lack of evidence. So this is where Flock says that it comes in, is that by having these cameras, by being able to capture and identify crimes that occur with cars, which are many, not all, but many, by being able to pinpoint where and when a car was, can definitively show that this car was there and that this car is affiliated with this suspect, and that suspect is who we can go after for perpetrating this crime. So police, you'll see glowing remarks in the media, in public meetings, things like that, saying how great it is. Flock's own website almost every day has a new case study, a new anecdote about some case where Flock cameras were used to solve a crime, and that can be anything from a relatively small retail theft to a burglary, to something much more serious like a kidnapping or a homicide or something like that.
Your report is calling out Flock's misleading marketing tactics, the way they're showcasing data. I am curious, did the company respond to your report?
It's interesting you say that. We have heard nothing from Flock at all. We've literally had no text messages, no emails. My colleague Tom Brewster and I have heard nothing from Flock. If Flock would like to talk to us, they know how to reach us. They know where we are. So yeah, if Flock feels like they want to respond, I'm sure that they will.
And so, Bruce, I'm assuming the answer, but you have reached out to Flock, right? They are just icing you?
Yes, we reached out to Flock more than once prior to publication of our two stories. Since then, we have not heard from them.
Cyrus Farivar, thank you so much for your reporting. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you for having me.